Well, good evening and welcome to this final session of the first ever Great Britain and Ireland multi-district pets. Feedback so far has been very encouraging and I thank you all for your commitment and participation. Numbers are still coming in here, we're up to 140 or so now, and we really appreciate the commitment and time you have put into this because it's far more than any of your predecessors have done for President-elect training. Tonight we've just got two components to enjoy. In a few minutes we're going to disperse into breakout rooms for the final special topic looking at running the club and the challenges you will see ahead of you in the coming year. On return to the main room we're going to take a very short leg stretch before we enjoy the company of our special guest speaker tonight, past RI Director and past RIBI President Gordon McInally. And he's going to be talking to us to bring the things to a close effectively. Then it's on to the close itself. So for now, and so successful was the breakout procedure last night, they're going to cast the same magic spell again and press the button to take us into our special topic discussion. So Phil, press the button. So everybody, welcome back, and presidents-elects, observers and team, here we are in the final leg now, and thanks for your prompt return. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce our final speaker for this event. He's a retired dental consultant, he's a past RI Director, a past RIBI President in 2018, and in 2018 he was the RI Toronto Convention Chairman. And I'll never forget his red jacket covered in the maple leaves. I'm surprised you haven't got it on, Gordon. It was a good look. So let me introduce you then and hand you over to Gordon McInally. Thank you, Gordon.
Well, Dennis, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Dennis, for that introduction. That was the sort of introduction that would have made my father proud, and my mother would probably have believed it. I'm a bit disappointed you chose not to mention my 25-metre swimming certificate or my Blue Peter badge, but who knows, maybe the next time. I'm also conscious that I stand between you all and the end of what has been a four-day event. So as Henry VIII said to all but one of his wives, I won't keep you long. But before I continue, can I just take a minute to thank District Governors-elect Ian Elliott and Jane Mordew, District Governor Keith Brownlee, and before him, DGE Dave Eagles, for having the foresight and the vision, and perhaps the courage to hold this multi-district event. Keith's actually standing by to act as my simultaneous translator tonight, if any of you have a problem with the accent. But as you well know, this is the first time a group of districts has come together in Rotary in Britain and Ireland to run a President-elect's training session. And I think it's a great concept. And I sincerely hope it's a concept that in future will spread through the rest of the districts in these islands. Thanks also to Chris Davis and Dennis and the team of facilitators. I know they have all worked their socks off to deliver this event this weekend. So it's great to be here, albeit virtually, and much as we would probably all rather have been in Why Boston Lakes. Hopefully a year from now, your successors will be able to meet somewhere face to face. And in addition to the formal sessions, they'll have the opportunity to put the Rotary world to rights in the bar of an evening, because that's often where the very best ideas come forward. I have to say, with so many pasts before my name these days, it's nice to be taken off the shelf and dusted down now and again and given the chance to address a Rotary audience like yourselves. I've got very happy memories of attending district events in each of your three districts over the years, from young musician events in Colchester to district conferences in Norfolk and Rotary Institutes in Milton Keynes. And I've got many friends in all three districts. Hopefully the next 15 to 20 minutes doesn't change that. It's a particular privilege to be speaking to such a large group of incoming club presidents, because with the greatest respect to all of Rotary's leadership, and as Shaker Mehta said on Saturday, I too believe that the most important Rotary leader is the club president. As Shaker said, it's within the clubs that the work of Rotary is done. And without the clubs, Rotary is nothing. And it's the clubs that the rest of us are all so anxious to support. I've been lucky enough to serve Rotary in a number of ways, but the biggest privilege by far was serving as club president and enjoying the support of my peers in the Rotary Club of South Queensferry. Now, you've all spent the weekend talking about and planning for the year ahead. So the last thing I want to do is to dwell on what you have already talked about. I'm sure many of you are approaching the 1st of July with a degree of trepidation. After all, I'm sure the majority of you knew that you would become club president before the coronavirus pandemic struck last March and the world changed forever. It was the late US Senator Robert Kennedy who said in a speech in 1966, "We live in interesting times." Well, 55 years later, I don't think I'd be stretching the point if I said we live in interesting times. But I also believe we live in exciting times. And that's why, in many ways, I envy you being club president next year, because of the opportunities the past year has presented you with as you move Rotary forward in your respective Rotary clubs. As I prepared for this weekend's event, I realised it was exactly 30 years ago I was preparing to serve as club president in 1991-92, as a fresh-faced 33-year-old who wanted to change the world. These weren't quite Rotary's halcyon days, but these were days when change was resisted. And I found it very hard to change the way my Rotary Club thought or operated, despite my relatively youthful optimism. It was very much a case of steady as she goes. It was interesting to hear Nicky Scott on Friday use the phrase, "just do it." I still remember the deathly silence as I brought my first address to my Rotary Club as its new president to a rousing conclusion and unfurled a banner that had been made by my then 7-year-old and 5-year-old daughters that said exactly these 3 words. The club weren't quite ready to just do it then. And I think that at that point, the members were beginning to wonder just exactly what they had got as a president. So that's why I envy you and the fact that you're lucky enough to be serving at a time when everyone, or at any rate, everyone should be, ready to embrace change. And as Chris Wells said on Saturday, ready to innovate. And embrace change and innovate we must, because without change, the future of Rotary could be bleak. Change can be daunting. As Chris Wells said, it can be scary, but it can also be exciting and energizing. Embrace it and thrive on it, because it must happen now before it's too late. We owe it to those who have gone before us. And there's another group that we owe it to. I couldn't help but notice, up until the end of last week, well in excess of 5,000 people within your 3 districts had died from coronavirus. Now, that might not seem like a huge number compared to the 125,000 who have died throughout the UK. But these 5,000 people are not just a statistic. They're not just a number. They were husbands, they were wives, they were mothers, they were fathers, they were brothers, they were sisters, they were colleagues, and they were friends. And I firmly believe we owe it to their memory to make sure we change and go forward in a positive way and better serve the communities in which we love. So what of the future? I hear a lot of people say that we have a fear we may be just at the beginning of the challenges COVID-19 has presented us with as we start to build back our communities and our world. But we should have nothing to fear. In the coming months, the government will seek to rebuild our society and our economy. Now, in many cases, communities have actually been strengthened by the challenges of the COVID pandemic. The communities you work with may fall into that category, but not all have. And the big question is, who's going to help rebuild the weakened communities? Who's going to help heal the rifts and the divisions exposed by the pandemic? Who's going to reach across the divide? Who's going to rebuild a sense of unity that says we can and we will make a difference in the lives around us? I would suggest that as Rotarians, we are best positioned to lead the rebuilding, reforming and reshaping that's going to be needed in our communities. It's who we are. It's what we do. You could say we were built for this. You know the communities in your districts better than anyone else, and certainly better than I. You know their strengths and you know their weaknesses, the good, the bad, the joys, the sorrows. You know, and I'm sure in many cases, you love them. You care about what happens to these communities, and you seek the very best for them. Rotary has always built back better, or as Nicky Scott so wisely said on Friday, built forward better following crises. Our membership, and more importantly, our ability to serve, grew following the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918. We grew after the Great Depression of 1921. We grew after the Asian flu pandemic of 1957. And we also grew after both World Wars. But I would suggest that only happened because we seized an opportunity. So as we find ourselves approaching the end of another crisis, you, me, all of us must seize this opportunity to take Rotary forward into what people are calling the new normal. But we need to do it now, before the opportunity passes. We're changing faster than ever at the moment in terms of embracing new technology. And I think we've probably seen the sort of changes that would have taken place anyway over the next 5 years happen within the last 12 months. We've had great examples of them over the course of this weekend. But I believe as we all exit lockdown, there's a big conversation to be had about our future and about the way we operate at every level. As I said earlier, I know you've spent a lot of time discussing how you might operate during the year ahead. But rather than talk about the how, I'd like to say something about the why. Why might you want to operate the way you will as we move into a new Rotary year? I think it's important that we never forget why Rotary exists. It exists to help others. To borrow the motto of the Rotary Foundation, it exists to do good in the world. It's all about do-goodery, as Chris Wells would say. But what good do we do? And that's not the easiest of questions to ask or to answer. Our incoming director, Nicky, knows if we're ever allowed again to travel beyond our own front doors, one of the obligations you accept when you become a member of the board of directors of Rotary International are the trips to RI headquarters in Evanston. Thankfully and hopefully the demands of travel will reduce in the new normal, but I went to Evanston a number of times during my time on the RI board. And towards the end of my 2-year term, I was stopped by an immigration officer at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, who, leafing through my passport, reviewing the previous entry stamps, asked me the question, "Why do you come here so often?" I explained that I was a Rotarian and I was attending a meeting at Rotary's headquarters. A quizzical look came on his face as he went on to ask me a second question. Rotary, what do they make? Now, realizing this was probably not the best time to go into a long and detailed discourse on precisely what Rotary made, I replied, make? Well, it makes a difference. We then shared a few minutes about what Rotary is, does, and stands for before I headed for the exit door and he turned his attention to his next customer. But that brief encounter set me thinking as I travelled on from the airport. Exactly what sort of difference does Rotary make within the world we serve? What sort of difference do the Rotary clubs in District 1080 1240 and 1260 make. It seems like another lifetime now, but I was lucky enough to be in Grant Park, Chicago on the 4th of November 2008, the night Barack Obama was elected to be the 44th President of the United States. Although it's more than 12 years ago, I'm sure many of you will recall one of the buzzwords of Obama's 2008 campaign. That word was hope. And so I would suggest that the most basic level, the difference Rotary makes is that we bring people hope, hope for the future. By lifting people out of poverty and giving them hope, I honestly believe we go a long way to making major inroads into strife and as a consequence help create a more peaceful world. Over the past few years, I've been lucky enough to see with my own eyes many examples of how Rotary brings people hope. I'm sure many of you have too, but perhaps it's worth reflecting on just a few of those examples. There are AIDS orphans living in abject poverty in Rwanda and elsewhere in Africa through no fault of their own. These children will live or die depending on Rotary. There are people in too many countries forced to walk miles for water that is polluted and diseased because there's no pump in their village. These people will drink clean water or not, depending on Rotary. There are small children living on the rubbish mountains in South America, digging for what they might find to eat. They will stay there or not, depending on Rotary. And only 18 months ago, I saw people in rural Kenya prepared to walk miles on their own to a dental clinic in a remote village because Rotary had promised to stop their pain. They will suffer or not, depending on Rotary. Now, that's only 4 examples of countless others I could give you of where Rotary, where you are doing good by bringing hope. But it's not enough simply to bring hope. In bringing hope, what is it we wish to achieve? Shaker spoke on Saturday about peace, one of the cornerstones of Rotary and one of the soon-to-be 7 areas of focus. Now, some people think that peace is simply an absence of war, an absence of armed conflict. But of course, we know that peace is so much more. Peace is freedom. Peace is healthy children and adults. Peace is clean water and sufficient food. Peace is education, human rights, dignity, clothing, housing, and concern for all mankind. But most of all, peace is love. What more could we strive for than a more peaceful world, a more caring world, a more loving world than we have just now? And it's the creation of a more peaceful world, a more caring world, and a more loving world, a kinder world, that answers the question, why do we do what we do? Friends, I'm conscious that time is our enemy, and I'm also conscious that I promised earlier I wouldn't take up too much of it. Lord Burkitt, writing in the Observer newspaper more than 50 years ago, said, "I don't object to people looking at their watches whilst I'm speaking, but I do object to those who start shaking them to make sure they're still going." As I glance around my screen, I can see a few people taking a sneaky look at their watches, or at least a glance towards the bottom right-hand corner of their screens to check the time. So far, I haven't seen anybody actually pick up a laptop and shake it, so I shall quit while I'm ahead. When our daughters were young, they used to measure the time until major events in their lives by sleeps. It was never a week until Christmas, it was 7 sleeps. It was never a fortnight until school broke up, it was 14 sleeps. So please don't be surprised, don't be frightened when I tell you there are 115 sleeps left until you become club president. I'm anxious that during your presidencies, Rotary in your clubs, in your districts, in Britain and Ireland and throughout the world should have its best year ever. And I don't say that for the sake of our President, Shaker Mehta. I don't say that for the sake of your leader, Director Nicky Scott. I don't say that for the sake of District Governors Ian, Keith or Jane. And with the greatest respect, I don't even say that for any one of your sakes. No, the reason I want next year to be Rotary's best ever is that by being so, when we all look back on 30th of June 2022 at the projects we've carried out, at the causes we've championed, at the people to whom we have given hope, we will do so in the knowledge that we have done our best for the sake of the people who needed us most. We will do so in the knowledge that we have done good in the world. We will have carried out do-goodery. We will do so in the knowledge that we have brought hope. And to paraphrase President-elect Shaker's theme, we will do so in the knowledge that through our service, we have changed lives. So as you boldly go forward to the 1st of July, I wish you well at this pivotal time for Rotary. Dare to dream, be the dream change makers, but above all, enjoy it. Be assured you have the support of each of your clubs, of your district team, and of each other, and also of all of us. Each and every one of you is a credit to the badge you wear, and I am proud to belong to the same organisation as you. Thank you.